Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. As others have mentioned, it's been a year to the day since our nation experienced horror and grief. 17 students and teachers at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School were murdered. And yes, the senator from the 6th mentioned that we've added 2 mothers to this body. I am one of those mothers. And a year ago, at the dinner table, my husband and I sat in shock with our 2 high school students. They wondered, would their high school be the next news story? Would the outpouring of thoughts and prayers on Twitter be about them? Would they live to see their graduation day? I never dreamed that my babies would live in this kind of world. In fact, when they were born 17 years ago and 19 years ago, there was an assault weapons ban in place. There was also an active and successful voluntary gun buyback program. So a year ago, over dinner, I told my children that these policies were in place when they were young. They were surprised, they were shocked, and they were angry. Why did we fail to keep these policies of protection in place? As the survivors of the Parkland shooting began to share their stories and advocate for solutions, many of us put our hope in them. They were our hope. For most of us, these kids were heroes, our hope for the future. But for the gun lobby, they're not children, they're the enemies. But let's remember, these are kids. These are brave kids. These are injured kids. These are grieving kids. These are our kids. They will inherit our world. What kind of world can we hope for if our children are gunned down in their math class? President Harry Truman is famous for saying, "The buck stops here." Well, fellow senators, the buck stops here. We can't prevent every shooting, but there are things that we can do to make shootings more difficult to accomplish. It's easier to buy a gun than to recycle scrap metal, where you have to show your ID and have your picture taken. Until we close background check loopholes and require training for a carry permit, and prevent predictably violent people from purchasing firearms, the tragedy of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School and every school shooting is on us, because the buck stops here. A year from now, what will we tell our children? Mr. President, I'd like to take a moment of silence, 17 seconds, for 17 lives. All rise, please.
Please rise for a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.